Glad you're streaming with us. Well, a judge just lifted the sweeping gag order ahead of Bryan Kohberger's sentencing for the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. Comes weeks after Kohberger officially entered a guilty plea as part of a deal he accepted so he wouldn't have to move forward with the trial. Legal contributor and trial attorney Bryan Buckmeyer joins me now. Bryan, let's talk about several media companies, including ABC, actually pushed for the gag order to be removed.
So, Kira, the thrust of the argument there from media companies, including ABC, as you pointed out, was that once Bryan Kohberger had pled guilty, the major argument or the major decision to keep this gag order, this non-dissemination order, had gone away. That the idea of trying to make sure that there's a fair and impartial jury and trial for Bryan Kohberger was no longer a concern now that he pled guilty. Even though the judge has lifted that gag order, though, in essence, it still somewhat remains. The DA's office is not going to make any pressers until after the sentencing next week, beginning on the 23rd, likely to go to the 24th. And they're going to go through all the documents that are still remaining sealed, so no FOIA or Freedom of Information Act requests will be processed until after the sentencing and the quote-unquote appeals process. So unlikely for us to see new information anytime soon.
Well, Kohberger's sentencing is next week. We've been talking about this. What do you think is going to happen? How this is going to play out?
So typically what we see is the victims, the family members who lost people in this tragic quadruple homicide are going to be able to have to give what's called victim impact statements. They're going to talk to Bryan Kohberger inside the court directly, telling him how his actions affected them. The judge will listen to those and also any statements from any attorneys or people speaking on behalf of those who cannot show up to the court themselves or do not feel comfortable doing so. Then Bryan Kohberger will have the opportunity to speak himself, and he may address the victims and their families as well. In this case, or the court, and then the judge will have the ability to render their decision. Now, for the most part, we know that Bryan Kohberger is facing consecutive life sentences as well as burglary charge on top of it. So how much time, we kind of already know, but what the judge will say in terms of handing down this sentence will be very impactful, as well as all the other statements that we're likely to hear over the course of that day or even potentially two.